With the NFL draft complete, now we can start planning for the fantasy football season. Yes, folks, your fantasy football draft is going to be here before you know it. So we're going to dive in. What do these rookies mean fantasy-wise and to their surrounding parts? And some Brown news coming up right now. Let's get to the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara, the sickest Cleveland Browns podcast.
Chubb runs, he's to the 10, 15, he's to the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. There goes Chubb, he's to the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Chubba Lubba Hub.
It's gonna be sick.
Hello, everybody. Has everyone recovered from the draft? Everyone kind of cleansed? The schedule release is going to be coming out at some point soon. Then we'll be able to plan road trips and figure out win-loss predictions and all of that. But has everyone recovered? I have, but then it comes down to, all right, we get over all the draft analysis. How do we prepare for the fantasy football season? Actually, I'm in the middle right now of a first-year dynasty slow draft. We got some guys taking 6 of his 8 hours. I'm waiting on that. But now we have to start to plan. Okay, we have to start to get ready. Look at how some of the Cleveland Browns work into that as well. But to help me do that, I have to bring in the most beloved man in Dog Pound Nation. He's back, Mr. Adam Rank from the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank.
I know we're good now. We're good.
You're good.
I'm sure everybody saw the video from the Super Bowl. David Njoku at first did not want to stop, but he is ultimately, he's a good person. You guys know this. He's a good person. And so he did stop, and we aired our differences, and I think we walked away friends. I didn't realize this too until later on that day. I'm interviewing my friend Akbar Bajabiamila, formerly of the NFL Network. You saw him during the draft doing some crowd work. He's on The Talk. I'm giving all his credentials, and American Ninja Warrior.
Yes.
And I forgot that him and Njoku were friends. I'm like, you didn't once think to just lob him a call. He's like, I didn't think it would get that far. But,
help me out.
It did. But we're good. I didn't need Akbar. Turns out.
No.
I didn't need his help.
Personality. That's right.
We settled that on our own, but I feel like we're on a good spot.
Yeah.
With David Njoku. I know we'll talk about his fantasy production in a bit. Do want to ask you about the draft though. Is it bittersweet because you didn't have any first round picks? Does it feel like you showed up to spring break after everybody? Like there's always like you show up at a Vegas road trip on a Saturday afternoon after everybody's been partying their ass off all day on Friday, and they're kind of like, I don't know if I can go back out on Saturday. And you're like, what? I just got here.
I'm ready.
Please, let's do some Jaeger bombs and get going.
They're like,
how did you feel? How did you feel about your draft ultimately?
Overall, for what we had, I was satisfied. I gave it a B- grade. Not that any of the picks were bad, but you didn't get a first round pick, so you don't have that instant playmaker. Somebody might turn into that, but we didn't have the shiny toy to unwrap at him for 3 years in a row. It was excruciating. I'm a big fan of the movie Draft Day. I was hoping Andrew Barry would pull a Sonny Weaver Jr. and sprinkle and get me my draft picks back. Never happened.
Never happened. And it's tough too, because I know that the Bears had 4 first round picks or 4 picks in general.
Yeah.
And or 5. It's sort of unsatisfying, but you're like, well, 2 of them were in the top 10. So I think it did work out that way. But,
Difference maker.
But it was a different story. And it was, but it made the draft party difficult because we were live right from the get-go, because obviously we were drafting Caleb Williams. Then we stayed on through Roma Dunze. We're like, might as well stick around for a little bit to see how this goes. So it was a little bit of a different draft party, but it was all good. Thanks to everybody who came out to Game Room Chicago. I'm promoting my stuff on your show. I don't care.
That's fine.
By the way, can I say something too? And I know that we'll have a lot of people who follow my work.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're not a Cleveland Browns fan and you're here because you came to see me or whatever, and if you don't follow Andy already, please do. Even if you don't watch his videos. I mean, watch his videos. But the subscription is huge. But the subscription is huge. Subscribe. That's what I tell everybody. You don't have to watch it. And anybody who's a Browns fan who's like, even if you don't like me, subscribe to the channel, because ultimately it helps out Andy. So
that is true.
That's how I'm going to beg people. Please. But no, but you do good work though. I like.
Thank you.
I like what you got going on. I appreciate you having me on after the Njoku thing blew up last year. So it's always good to be on with Andy Mac.
That's right.
McNamara.
And you know what? That's all good. The Browns are feeling good. I hope. And Njoku's ready to have a big year. But let's talk about this rookie class, because now, Adam, as I said off the top, this is when the real planning for the fantasy football season comes, because you have rookies who everything has an effect. Rookie gets drafted. That affects other guys who are on the team. What's the depth chart look like and all that? Your Bears made a lot of splash. Yeah. So you got Caleb Williams, you got Dunze. Chicago-wise, they're kind of the talk of the town. What does it mean fantasy-wise for your Bears? Well,
it's interesting because when you talk about the movie Draft Day, I really like it too. The K-Dog, fellow Cal State Fullerton alumnus. I think with if you're going to do a Mount Rushmore of Cal State Fullerton alumni, the K-Dog is up there with Gwen Stefani, maybe me, maybe Bruce Bowen. Who knows? But here's my thing is the Bears had that huge splash, and it seemed like something out of a movie, getting 2 top 10 guys. And it's not just Chicago Bear fans who are saying this. Sauce Gardner was also of the mind of like, well, why do the Bears get two top 10 picks? This doesn't seem fair at all. But ultimately, we care about in this conversation about fantasy football. And so for me, Caleb Williams is the 1.01 in Superflex dynasty drafts. Like, there's no argument there. He's the best player in this draft. If you play Superflex, you're going to want to get Caleb Williams. If you're playing in traditional dynasty leagues with just one quarterback, you could tumble a little bit given your quarterback situation. If you have somebody who's a little bit older, if you've been riding with Kirk Cousins or Matthew Stafford over the last couple of years, then you might want to consider taking Caleb Williams over one of the wide receivers, maybe not over Marvin Harrison Jr. or somebody like that, but still want to give him some consideration. When it comes to redraft leagues, Caleb Williams is just outside of the top 10, but he's certainly a fantasy quarterback that I want on my roster. If regardless of who you have, if you go into your fantasy league and you've got Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, or if you have a Jalen Hurts, whomever it is, Kirk Cousins, a couple of those guys I just mentioned, Caleb Williams is the perfect guy to start the season on your bench. You cannot let him go waiver wire, because at that point during the year, he is going to be the most added player in fantasy football. And we're probably going to be doing shows about this, and we're going to be like, yeah, you know what? The top waiver ad this week is Caleb Williams. Like, why is he available in 60% of NFL.com leagues or whatever it is? Because like people won't draft him. And I understand it. Rookie, who knows? But to me, the expectation or the floor for Caleb Williams fantasy-wise should be C.J. Stroud, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow a couple of years ago. Like, that is a reasonable expectation because of the weapons that he has around him.
That got built up.
Yeah, like it really does. Like, it's almost impossible for him to fail, which I know it's jinxing it given the Bears' history. But, like, honestly, like, there has never been a number 1 overall pick who's been set up this nicely over the last, I can't even remember. Well, the one thing that it does hurt, though, Andy, is that it hurts the receivers, because who are you drafting? Like, if it was just DJ Moore, similar to what it was last year, that's an automatic. Like, DJ Moore would be a first-round pick in redraft leagues if it were not for the fact that they've got Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, they have Cole Kmet, they're going to be able to run the football. And I really, everybody always accuses me of trying to sneak my friends into the conversation, but Tyler Scott's going to be a lot better this year. And he's going to be somebody that is going to score touchdowns this year. He's going to be making some big plays, and people are going to be like, what do we do with him fantasy-wise? But with all of these wide receivers, I don't know who consistently is going to get the targets, which is going to hurt everybody's value, although obviously they're going to be rostered.
Right. Well, and here's the other thing, too. We don't have anything to go off of with Caleb Williams at the NFL level. If you pick any veteran quarterback, you can say, okay, I know his favorite target last year was X, or this, he's on a new team, this type of receiver he likes. We don't know that with Caleb Williams. And sometimes you get chemistry with young quarterbacks with players you wouldn't expect. Like Baker Mayfield years ago, he would go to Hollywood Higgins.
Yes.
You're right. Our guy just retired, Hollywood Higgins. And that was different compared to where he could have gone. So I think that's going to be very interesting. But yeah, to your point, instead of getting your seventh wide receiver, get Caleb Williams, park him on the bench, see what happens.
Yeah, and it's one of those players who could really, obviously, if you have an injury at the quarterback position, it's huge.
Right there.
But think about anybody last year who picked up CJ Stroud, and for a while, Anthony Richardson also played into this as well. It's like having that guy is such a valuable resource. And of course, then the questions will become like, well, do I start him over him? I never like rotating quarterbacks. I always go into it like thinking this is my quarterback, and unless he's on a bye week or injured, I'm not benching him because I don't want to get into one of these situations. And it's always what if Aaron Rodgers' first MVP season after the Jordan Love drafting? Whenever they drafted Jordan Love, I remember being very vocal on the NFL Fantasy Live, being like, I'm going with Aaron Rodgers because nobody does petty like this guy. And people think like, oh, you're just reverse jinxing him or whatever. I'm like, all right, like think what you want, but like he is going to have a monster season. And I feel like I had somebody like Justin Herbert, like somebody who's really good.
Right.
And at some point you just got to make the decision, like, this is my quarterback. Actually, I think it was Herbert. Maybe. I got to think of the years again. I just remember that I ended up trading Aaron Rodgers during the playoff stretch to get a wide receiver. And it actually worked out really well for me. But like having that extra quarterback, and I know like people make fun of that strategy. Like, you only need like, but I feel it's a necessity.
Yeah.
To have two fantasy quarterbacks to go for you.
Look at all the injuries last year, Adam. Across the board. You don't have it. You're picking up scrubs, right?
Yeah.
You're panicking.
You're like, you're playing Joshua Dobbs. And you're like, and it was fine for a couple of weeks, but you're like, oh. And there are times where you're playing like Gardner Minshew, who again, fine quarterback. Colts almost get to the playoffs. But still not the ideal situation.
No, you're going week to week. You're crossing your fingers. You're waiver wire hunting for the hole. And that's, I kind of feel again to that tight end position. We'll swing back to that later, but the tight end spot is similar where if you don't, and there's, you can go different strategies. You kind of wait later and hope you get lucky. But if you just wait, you're going to be looking at the waiver wire for your tight ends the entire year, right? Like if you don't this is a fascinating year though, because Adam, is this the passing of the guard year? Is this like Sam Laporte and Travis Kelce? We saw the dip. Is he over that hill? Is this no longer Travis Kelce first tight end off the board?
Yeah, I think we're going to see Travis Kelce's value diminished this year because a lot of people are not going to take him. Like obviously he was going in the first, second round over the last couple of years. Nobody's going to do that because of players like Sam Laporta who are going to be available out there. And even, everybody's going to buy in again on Kyle Pitts. There are just too many good tight ends now that previously it was a unicorn position where he was far and away superior. I remember a couple of years ago, the strategy was the one that I was going with was Antonio Brown and Travis Kelce. And it was an unstoppable duo because Antonio Brown was so good. Like
what a time to be alive.
We keep seeing those memes about like who belongs in this conversation of like what wide receiver belongs. And it's the greats like Jerry Rice and Terrell Owens and players like that. And then it's like, who is the other guy? And it's like, you know what? Like before the Vontaze Burfict play
for the stuff,
Antonio Brown was actually one of the most incredible receivers that I've ever seen. Now we could debate because like when you look at when you put the numbers up against Randy Moss, and Randy Moss has those dark years in Oakland that kind of bring him down a little bit, but you're like, God, like Antonio Brown was so good consistently. But of course, but again, going back to the question about tight end, I think that this is going to be a time that we see some of the other tight ends start to make I'm comfortable now passing on Travis Kelce because I feel pretty good about who I'm picking up later in drafts. Last season, it was Dalton Schultz, who the first couple of weeks, people were on my case. The first go, thanks for the Dalton Schultz. Good pick, Rank. And it's like, can you give it like a month?
Can you wait
a couple of weeks? Like he's going to be fine. But there will be a lot of other good players out there. And I'm thinking Cole Kmet. See, Cole Kmet's another one. Like ideally you would have been like, I'm all about Cole Kmet, but you're like, you know what? Like there's so many guys. Like we don't know. And that's going to be the great thing about Caleb Williams is if you get you'll get Caleb, when you get Caleb Williams on your bench, you got to get one of the pass catchers. I don't know which one. I mean, do you roll the die? Do you expect like maybe it is Rome Odunze? Like maybe, but I feel like if you're in a PPR league, I feel like you got to get Keenan Allen. And then I think Keenan Allen's going to end up being the default. And I'm worried, but I'm not worried because I don't know, because we've never really seen DJ Moore. I'm trying to think of this. Have we seen DJ Moore on a really competitive team? Whereas like he might not be like getting all the production, but if the Bears are winning, like I feel like that'll be fine. But it'll be, God, but you also think like DJ Moore is going to end up being the guy because he's the best receiver on that team.
And Allen's been getting injured. He's kind of going in that Julio Jones phase, Adam. Remember, every week you got the cube aside, and
I'm not speaking to that.
But like he's at that phase of his career where he's always banged up, but then he'll go out and play well, and then drives you nuts fantasy wise. You try to hunt. What about this? Okay, so we talk young tight end. Sam Laporta has kind of de-spooked people from taking the young tight end because before it was like, well, wait till they're 27 and then they'll do it. Well,
the toughest position to play in football. Yeah.
Amen. But now we got Brock Bowers, lauded, rightfully so, out of Georgia. But you go to the Raiders. We mentioned Minshew, Aiden O'Connor. I don't know about you, Adam. I'm a little hesitant. I don't love the QB situation.
I love it. No. You love this. No, Gardner Minshew is going to get him the ball. I think the Raiders were probably one of my favorite spots for him to land. As a matter of fact, in my NFL.com piece, the NFL mock draft with a twist, where I don't predict where players are going, but I suggest what a team should do in a certain spot. And believe it or not, I suggested the Bears pick Caleb Williams. So thank you. Now, I had Caleb Williams and I had Rome Odunze going to the Bears.
Okay.
I had the Giants taking a lineman. So we'll see when Malik Neighbors becomes like the new Odell Beckham Jr. I'll probably have to wear that one. I did say that the Patriots should not take Drake May and go with Marvin Harrison Jr. But we'll see. That'll be a fun one to revisit in a number of years. But I did have the Raiders going with Brock Bowers. Now, obviously, last year they used a high draft pick on the tight end out of Notre Dame, who was pretty good. Like he's a good player. But what I reasoned in my piece is like at some point you cannot pass up on elite level playmakers, which Brock Bowers certainly is. And I think if you look at Daniel Jeremiah's final top 50 list, Brock Bowers was in the top 5. Too many teams passed on him because they don't view tight end as a need.
Right.
And when you look at what the Falcons did a couple of years ago, using the number 8 overall selection on Kyle Pitts, top 10 pick on him, people might have been looking at that like, maybe that was a wasted pick. I think that it's an offensive system that's been wasting him.
No. Hopefully that picks up for him this year.
But Getsy, believe it or not, I can't believe I'm going to say nice things about Luke Getsy, but like they did run out 12 personnel last year, and we saw how effective Cole Kmet could be. Bob Tunyon could have been a much better player. Like he gifted Cleveland a victory by dropping a pass against you guys. So they do like that. That's why Bob Tunyon wasn't getting the ball more, was because he just couldn't make the plays. I really do believe that Getsy is going to design opportunities to get both those guys on the field, get somebody open. Too often, we get locked into the wide receiver 1, who's the wide receiver 2. Well, McDonald and Bowers are going to be on the field at the same time. So for me, it's a non-issue that they had a tight end already. Like that's mostly, I don't know. You gotta look at the way the guy plays the position.
Yeah. And how they're going to use them, right? Like it's not, I think people are still stuck in the way of like, he's going to be an inline blocker. You can use him essentially like a wide receiver, just in a different spot. Like that's okay.
He compares favorably to George Kittle and can do a lot of the things that George Kittle does. And so for me, I don't know, that's another player. Like when I was doing my dynasty league, Superflex dynasty league, the quarterbacks went off. Well, I only wanted Caleb. And then the receivers are gone. And I already have Kyle Pitts. And I'm like, I just couldn't pass up. I had a big decision between Brock Bowers and Brian Thomas Jr., who's a player that I absolutely love.
Yeah, me too.
I actually went with Brock Bowers. I think he's more dynamic. I'm sort of regretting it. I kind of want to figure out a way to get both. I want to go back and find the guy who has Brian Thomas Jr. and start offering deals for him.
Make a deal.
I want to make a deal because I want Brian Thomas Jr. I think that guy Wow. You talk about, I thought like for the Jets, I understand the Jets going offensive linemen. They signed 2 guys in their 30s to protect Aaron Rodgers. Like, okay, you got to get the line right. And Fashanu's really good player. So I'm like, okay, like that makes sense. You're not like, I don't think that's a bad pick. But I liked for the Jets, I like Brian Thomas Jr. because he can stretch the field, get down there. Aaron Rodgers throwing some deep balls. I thought like he could immediately come in and make an impact with this team. But, they did kind of a sensible thing of going with the lineman. I'm like, okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
I feel like like when you're on your final deathbed, so to speak, Robert Saleh, like Fashanu helps out the next coach. You know what I'm saying?
Not
like you signed 2 30-year-olds. The next coach will appreciate Fashanu's there. You might not get the benefit of it.
You might not. Well, Adam, the funny thing is that Brian Thomas Jr. pick you mentioned was originally Cleveland's first-round pick. That went from Cleveland to Houston to Minnesota and eventually to Jacksonville. That was that and the 4th-round pick were the last bit of the Deshaun Watson trade. So, yeah, the Browns technically could have got Brian Thomas Jr. That makes me sad. I didn't realize that.
But then would you rather have Deshaun Watson or Joe Flacco and Brian Thomas Jr.?
Oh, God. Listen, outside of the playoff game, give me – we were singing songs. Wacko for Flacco, Flacco fever. Adam, it was wild. Was it sustainable? Probably not, but it was – I have to say, it was nice not having to be like, oh, I kind of like my quarterback and hoping no one yells at you about it. It was kind of it was kind of nice. It was the first time we were having fun with a quarterback since Baker.
Yeah. No, it was a fun thing. And I told this to David. It's like, I love, I mean, before everything went down, I'm still a huge Njoku fan. But I'm like, I really like Flacco. Like I feel like I've been one of Flacco's biggest defenders over the last number of years because he was a really good playoff quarterback during his run with the Baltimore Ravens and what he did. And I never understood why he kept getting, I always felt he was still pretty good. Like I felt he was pretty good. I thought he was one of the guys who had the most success against the Patriots. And the Ravens always did such a great job of drafting defense but just could never draft a wide receiver for whatever reason. So I was always a big Flacco guy. And again, I'll still be a Flacco guy, but it was
born a Flacco man, and damn it, we'll die a Flacco man.
Yes.
That's it. Well, Adam, let's talk Browns here. Okay. David Njoku, Deshaun Watson. Now, Njoku, and I think we have to wrap our heads around this with a lot of the Browns offense. You think David Njoku's production, the way the season ended, the second half, after his face was lit on fire and the man played, like the heart of that guy cannot be overstated. But the thing was, his fantasy value spiked with Joe Flacco, not Deshaun Watson. And that's where my hesitation comes in with Watson and the rest of this offense, where now they brought in a new offensive coordinator. This is going to be all retweaked and revamped and a whole lot of passing. You're not going to see the bunch of tight ends in the traditional sense. So there's going to be lots of opportunity. But we have to, when we're looking at the numbers and the success of the Browns last year, we have to remember that those came with Joe Flacco under center. So I just wonder, when we're looking at drafting David Njoku in fantasy, the upside we know is through the roof, but with Watson and that being a true unknown, where do we look to draft David Njoku?
Well, this is the kind of analysis that I really enjoy because it makes sense. Like, you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of fantasy enthusiasts will look at this and be like, oh, Njoku, like it'll be a talking point on all the fantasy podcasts about like, well, his production really came with Joe Flacco. So for me, Njoku's a sell. I'm buying. I'm in because you can't look at what happened last. Like, he broke out.
Yeah.
He's here. He's here. He's arrived.
Yeah.
You know, like, let's say it's something happened to, God forbid, Patrick Mahomes. Or let's say like Patrick Mahomes was replaced with Justin Herbert. Would you look at Travis Kelce and be like, I don't know, like all his production came with Patrick Mahomes? Like, no, you'd be like, the player is really good.
Yeah.
And I think that once you exhibit to coaches that you have an ability to go out there and perform at a certain level, the coaches now have an expectation placed upon that player. And I think that that's where Stefanski is right now. Like, he looks at Njoku, knows what he can do. And like, okay, like we were successful with him last year. They scheme him up. Like they start scheming him up. Now, obviously, it was Joe Flacco throwing the football, but obviously Deshaun Watson watched those games, watches film, and now we'll go out there and be like, yeah, I guess that Njoku is a pretty valuable weapon. This is such an old reference. I hate to use this because people will be like, who are these guys I've never heard of? But way back in the day, and I remember this because this is when I was first starting to play fantasy football, is Troy Aikman never threw the ball to Michael Irvin, like for whatever reason. Like it just was like this. If you look at Michael Irvin's numbers in the first part of his career, like was sort of ignored. And then when Steve Berline took over, Steve Berline, Michael Irvin told Steve Berline, you throw me the football. Don't look at Jay Novacek. Look at me. Don't look at Alvin. Look at me. And Berline funneled targets to Irvin. I know this is such an old story, but it's like when Aikman returned eventually, he started going to Irvin more. And it's like, oh my God, like Troy Aikman unlocked, or Berline unlocked Michael Irvin. And I think it's going to be a very similar situation in this instance where
I like that.
And I really do like a lot of the Browns receivers. Like I think the Browns did a really nice job. Got a really nice receiving room, kind of underrated. Yeah. I'm like, I really dig that. And I'm like, but I still think that's to the benefit of David Njoku. And I think that he's such a valuable piece inside the red zone. And I know that I have this blind spot for Amari Cooper because I'm too close to the Carr family. So they're always like, oh, Amari Cooper's not a great red zone threat. And I got to go through the numbers and go see. I don't find that to be accurate, but like, I don't know. I'm listening. I've sat with David too much.
He's so consistent, Amari. He's so
no, he's good. Like he's such a good. I like Amari Cooper so much. I remember meeting him when he was a rookie with the Raiders. Oh, and I was talking to him beforehand, and he's really quiet. And so somebody like one of my producers was like, like what's wrong with that? I'm like, he's just quiet. Like there was no bad vibe with him. Sometimes people just don't like to talk.
Yeah, he's very introvert. Like
look at me. Like you don't want to talk to me. No, this is before I insulted the city of Cleveland. But I know I still liked him. I'm like, no, he's fine. Like he's just quiet. Like I go, don't you have friends who are like that? Like I have friends who just sit there like, yeah. But sometimes are you having a good time? Like everything okay? Okay, go away.
Nothing wrong. Just check on him. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's fine. He's like a really good player. Like he should not be on he should not have moved as many teams as he did. And I even remember when he first went to the Dallas Cowboys, I was a little dubious. Again, I blame the Cars for this. I was a little dubious of how good he was going to be, but holy Lord, he made Dak Prescott's career. And I'm like, I think people unearth this every once in a while. I think it's one of my best freezing cold takes. And I'm like, yeah, that one, and obviously 6 and 10. That was a good one. I'm like, yeah, that was a good one. Like, yeah, he ended up being a lot better than I thought he was going to be for the Dallas Cowboys.
And then the trade to the Browns, arguably the best trade Andrew Berry's ever made. 5th round pick because Dallas couldn't afford him. And he turns into the leading receiver. And now, year 30, was Deshaun Watson's favorite target. Again, Ken Dorsey's going to be bringing in. Andrew Berry openly said, we're going to be throwing the ball a lot. Nick Chubb isn't going to be ready for the start of the season. That fantasy backfield in Cleveland, maybe sit on Chubb, put him on the IR if you like. But anybody else, that's going to be a committee. So now the question is, Jerry Jeudy, everyone dumps on him except Andrew Berry glowingly, and they extended him. And Adam, I think the dark horse here, I want a lot of shares of late, is Cedric Tillman. I think especially dynasty-wise, that guy has stud written all over him, and no one's talking about him.
Yeah, let's keep it that way. I really, but he's another one of those guys. And we were talking about, the Bears situation of like who really benefits in this one. When all the defenses, are they sliding to DJ Moore? Are they sliding to Amari Cooper? Does that open it up for some of the other guys?
Right.
I really do believe that's the case. And I think that Ced has a real big opportunity with a team that probably is going to be throwing the ball more than they want to. I know it's going to look different than Cleveland is used to, but yeah, they're going to throw the football because remember too, when Ken Dorsey was in Buffalo, they threw the ball.
Sure.
And it wasn't until they went with whoever the dude who failed. I still don't like Buffalo.
Brady. Joe Brady?
Joe Brady.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens with Joe Brady. Scares me. There was something I heard about Joe Brady. When he was blown out of, what was it, Carolina or New Orleans?
I think it was Carolina.
One of the NFC South teams. It's like he doesn't do a great job of self-scouting. So like he's always good for 4 weeks. And then everybody catches on.
And he's
and
like,
it's a nightmare. And if you look at the timeline last season for Buffalo, you're like, nah, that kind of checks. So I'm interested. I'm kind of avoiding as many Bills as possible this year. I know people are. I know it's a little spicy, especially with Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen is so athletic and he can run and he can kind of overcome some of that stuff. But at the same time, the price that he's going to cost you, I'll wait. I'll wait for somebody else.
Or if you do get some Bills, then you take the strategy at week 4, start trying to trade him.
Start getting rid of him. Yeah.
We'll call it the Joe Brady line.
The Joe Brady line. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Once you hit October, forget it. All right. One more for you here. Let's swing back to the wide receivers because there's, the talent. The Marvin Harrison Jr., Ohio State guy. We love him on the show, of course. Neighbors. The Giants finally got a weapon. Hallelujah. You finally got, I don't know if he's going to be able to get the ball, but you got Odunze that you said. You got Xavier Worthy. Is this, Adam, I'm like, as soon as he ran that 4.2 at the combine, I was like,
oh no.
I was like, the stinking Chiefs are getting him, and he's going to be not Tyreek Hill 2.0, but you know what I mean. He's going to be a weapon. Do you like him?
Don't buy into that hype already. Although it was funny. Here's the thing too. This is great.
He's thin.
Is they showed a video, like Xavier Worthy's first catch, and you saw it. Oh my God, are we going to be going through the same thing that we went through with Jamar Chase? Like, remember Jamar Chase all of a sudden forgot how to play football?
Yep.
And they're running out the videos, and he says like, "Oh, I missed like having the stripe on the football or whatever it was."
We're like, "Oh man!"
And then everyone's like, "This guy sucks," and like nobody wanted to draft him. I feel like this is the same way. I still feel like the Chiefs want to focus in on one guy, Rashee Rice. We don't know what his situation is going to be. There's still Sky Moore. Like, I don't know. Is Sky Moore ever going to be a thing? I don't know.
He'll be the guy. Like 1 week out of 4, he'll go like 200 yards, and then he won't do anything for 5 weeks.
Yeah, and then like they'll do something crazy too. They'll pick up like Cam Akers or somebody, and he'll end up like having 50 receptions, like something nutty that you would just be like, yeah, of course that's the way that's going to go. But yeah, Xavier Worthy, I'm ready to buy in again. Like, why wouldn't you?
I know.
Like when you're looking at these guys now, obviously Harrison, Malik Neighbors, good. Odunze, it's very tough because he's got, not for a lack of talent or anything like that, but because he's got so much competition in that wide receiver room. Brian Thomas Jr. is probably my number 3 fantasy guy right now, but I think Xavier Worthy
in Jacksonville.
What's that now?
A lot of opportunity in Jacksonville.
I think so. I think that anybody who I have Gabe Davis on a dynasty league, and I was like, son of a gun. Like, I thought like, maybe Trevor Lawrence will unlock some consistency. And I love Brian Thomas Jr. so much that I didn't hate that he went there, but I hate that I don't have him.
Right.
But I think that, Worthy top 5. So that would be, that's my 3, 4. Because like, you still got to have Rome Odunze.
Oh, sure.
Because Caleb might just come in and be like, I'm only throwing it through Odunze, especially if you roll so much coverage to DJ Moore. And then you have a situation like that. I don't know.
You're going to I think the Bears, real life wise, great shape fantasy wise, is going to be interesting to see.
No, absolutely.
Which real life wise, great. It's just fantasy.
Yeah. Listen, I'll take it. Like,
we want Super Bowls, damn it. All right.
If the Bears win 10 games and I don't have a wide receiver at over 1,000 yards, I'm still fine with that.
As long as you get the dubs, that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Adam, always very generous with your time. Tell people you got the show, you got the Sick Podcast, you got the NFL Network. You're all over. Yeah,
you know what? We're going to be doing one final Total Access for me next week before that show goes away. And then, working on some other things for the NFL. We're trying to figure out, because of everything that's been in flux with the NFL, we're trying to figure out how we're going to do this schedule predictions. Because when the schedule release comes out, my predictions will follow along shortly. And I know Cleveland
and haunt you for a year.
I feel like people are going to be very anxious to see what this is going to look like. So we're working on that. And of course, the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank. depending on when you see this, we have Bears punter Tory Taylor joining the show. We're very excited about that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to get to know him a little bit. And so, yeah, follow along. And again, if you're even if you hate me and you're upset with what I picked last year, that's fine. I feel like we squashed the beef.
All squash.
And just subscribe to the channel. You don't have to watch it ever.
Yeah.
But just subscribe to it.
Do Adam a solid. Come on.
And if you're here because of me, and this is the first time you're seeing Andy, subscribe to the show. Subscribe to it.
Double subscribe.
But watch it. But watch a couple of episodes.
But mainly
you'll be entertained.
Mainly subscribe. Adam, always a pleasure, buddy. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Pleasure being with you. And we'll see you later, Cleveland.
Absolutely. There he goes. Adam Rank. Love having Adam on. Absolutely. And look, guys, don't be mad at Adam anymore. It's done. Okay? It's done. We're on. Great fantasy talk. Boy, we could have gone on for hours with that. Phenomenal fantasy talk. Jaden Daniels with Washington. What should he do? The Drake May situation that Adam brought up. I thought that was interesting because to me, it showed that New England was not following the old Belichick way. If you were following the Belichick way, J.J. McCarthy, 100% would have been a New England Patriot. 100, without a shadow of a doubt. You want, Belichick likes ordinary, average Mac Jones. J.J. McCarthy would have been it. Drake May, different mindset. You got former Browns coordinator Alex Van Pelt over there. I view him, I've said it before, as kind of the Justin Herbert of this draft, a very high ceiling, maybe low floor, biggest boomer bust out of this quarterback class. Jaden Daniels going to be interesting too, because I like the mobility. I like the arm talent. And he's got some pieces. They're still figuring out in Washington, but Jaden Daniels could be somebody like Caleb Williams where in redraft leagues, don't let him go to the waiver wire. At the end, if he's still sitting there, instead of that 7th running back you're not going to play, pick up the extra QB. Park him. Can trade him, can use on buy, injury, just in case. Just in case. Some Browns news. The Cleveland City Council has invoked the Art Modell rule about trying to stop the Browns from moving out of Cleveland. I've seen some panic on this. This is not a big deal. The moving out of Cleveland is literally across a town line to Brook Park, across from the airport. Picture if you're a Simpsons fan. Springfield and Shelbyville. Remember the Lemon Tree episode where they would go back and forth? That's what that is. So I think it's posturing, and who knows where that stadium issue is going to land. I want to know where you think it's going to land, where you want it to land. Do you want the stadium to stay downtown? Because remember, if it stays where it is, you can refurbish it, but there's not going to be a roof. Okay? And it's going to be still hell getting in and out of. Or you get the new fancy super big facility, Brook Park, and it's not downtown, which can be problematic. Where do you come out on it? Hit us up, subscribe, leave comments, get us on social at SickPodBrowns on X, at AndyMC81 on X and Instagram and TikTok, at AndyMCSports. Thanks again to the great Adam Rank for stopping by. Any fantasy football questions, folks? Hey, it's that time of year again. Hit us up with the fantasy questions. You've been watching the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara. Go Browns!
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.